Hello, crew of the Linterprise. We couldn't quite bring ourselves to allow your podcast feed to be empty for a week, so we decided to go with the lesser of two evils, which is to go full shades of grey and to give you a compilation of all of the episodes covering Season 3 of Lower Decks, just in time for Season 4 to launch, and we'll be covering that next week. Enjoy! So, this week in the Season 3 premiere, the crew of the Cerritos is grounded as Captain Freeman. No.
Right?
Captain Freeman is being put on trial for a crime she didn't commit. In the meantime, our Lower Decks crew, led by Mariner, must find a way to get back to the Cerritos to find some logs that could prove her innocence, plus shenanigans.
Not tree logs. This is actually like a digital documentation.
Yeah, they stopped carving into actual logs long ago because it was too much weight.
Turns out we need trees.
Not in space.
Right.
No air in space. So, Deneé, what did you think of this episode?
I loved
it.
This was one where I can tell that there's a really good cannonball aimed directly for superfans a couple times.
A literal cannonball.
I didn't even mean that.
You didn't mean to do that?
No.
Oh my goodness.
That was accidentally brilliant. No, because the visual is like when you take aim at something and like when you hit, it hits hard, like a cannonball.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
I looked over at you during the show a couple times, and you, if you were in a
Grinning?
chair that didn't have feet, like your feet couldn't touch the floor, you would have just been like a kid, just
my legs are
wiggling.
waggling around. I'm jumping backwards and forwards. There was so much good stuff. So many references in this one, and a few that hit me really well because of the certain movie that they came from, which happens to be my favorite Star Trek movie of all time. So this episode was very much designed to hit Ian on a lot of levels. Loved it. Absolutely worked. Just the episode itself as a story works. It's a classic retake the ship because there's an injustice being done with I love the spin because Starfleet is always like, Starfleet stands for good, but no matter what, Starfleet is doing some sketchy shit. So usually like Picard will have to say, this isn't what Starfleet stands for, what are you doing? And I love the ending of the episode where it turns out Starfleet did exactly what it was meant to do.
That was
what
nice.
A great ending.
Because honestly, I was expecting it to be a sketchy thing, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's because I watched TNG and it's just in me somewhere. Maybe it was just the way that they kind of toned it, but it definitely was a delight that went exactly according to plan, and our B team did not go according to it almost reversed itself. Like,
it was so great. They should have just stayed at home. Like if they'd have stayed at home, everything would have been fine. The Lower Decks crew quickly work out that they can't transport to the Cerritos. They have to find a ship that's going to get them there. And this takes them to a recreation of the First Contact site in Bozeman, Montana. Now, I love this so much because it's pulled directly out of the second TNG movie, First Contact. And this is just littered with First Contact references. It's so great. But I love that film so much. And like the score, the music, the First Contact music is so great. And they put it in this episode as well, like the swelling.
Amazing.
It's so great. And obviously it's from Cochrane. They get the same voice, the same actor. They use his voice to voice the recreation of Cochrane as well. And like there's this scene in the movie where Geordi and Riker end up on the flight as well with Cochrane because the ship got damaged and obviously they're going to help. And just as they're doing the countdown, Cochrane is like, wait, we can't leave, we have to stop. And Riker and Geordi are like, abort the mission, we got to stop. And he pulls out this green disc and puts on the music and he's like, oh, no, it's okay, I found my disc. And then he puts on the song.
Oh, so that was like a nod to that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's so great.
The vineyard scene at the beginning cracked me up.
So that's definitely a nod to obviously Picard's vineyard, and Boimler is wearing the same outfit that Picard's brother, who manages the vineyard, wears. He's wearing exactly the same thing, and he will taste the grapes and all of that. I just love the twist that his family has a vineyard, but they turn it into raisins. Like, instead of making something fun like wine, it's, we dry them out and ruin them.
But then also at the same time, to have these women just throwing themselves at my boim or whatever his name is.
Uh-huh.
I I was really cracked. It kept like getting a little bit more ridiculous, and I'm like, okay, so this is a thing, whatever. And then it just goes right over the edge of the horizon, and Liz Hafnigo was like, I want to get naked with you.
Yes.
And he's just like, what did he say? He was like, just spray off with the hose, Leanne.
Yeah, spray it out with the hose, Leanne. They're just so oblivious.
Another thing that made me giddy was seeing the snowflake in the opening sequence.
Oh yes, that was great. I knew it was coming. Because
You did?
I've seen like a side-by-side picture because that scene evolves. So in the first series, there's only the Borg cubes and the Romulans and the Cerritos. In season 2, there's a pack-led ship that joins in the battle as well. And in season 3, you've got the crystalline entity that's there as well, the big snowflake. And I was like,
which I recognized because you
recognized it.
You did that in Trek or Triction one day, and I didn't believe you, but it was actually real. It was insane. What's going on?
It's so great. I wonder if she'll notice that it's that snowflake. And immediately you're like, the snowflake, it's there. So fun. I love it. So there was a couple of other references at the end. A captain that you will recognize when I mention him. So Morgan Bateson, who was on the special mission with Tuvok to go to the Pack-Leds and figure out what they were doing to entrap Captain Freeman. And Captain Bateson is the captain of the Bozeman that crashes into the Enterprise that causes the time loop.
I am so sorry to disappoint you that I don't know who you're talking about.
We remember the episode. We did Cause and Effect, where the Enterprise keeps blowing up again and again and again.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So there's the ship that crashes into them.
Yes.
And eventually they prevent the ship from crashing into them. And it turns...
Yes, yeah.
And it turns out that they've been in space. They think they've just left space dock a couple of weeks ago, but they've been in the loop for 80 years.
Right.
And so
it's that captain?
That captain, the captain of that ship.
So he's still alive and well.
Still alive and well, 20 years, what would it be? 25 years later? Yeah, and now he's like in command of some secret ops team with Tuvok.
That's incredible.
I love that
That's
so much.
So fun.
That's so fun. What a great
love that.
Okay, this week we are talking about season 3, episode 2 of Star Trek Lower Decks, the least dangerous game, and we find ourselves with the crew of the Cerritos, the Lower Decks crew, enjoying a relaxing game of Star Trek D&D with Martok.
Wow, what was that?
That was a lot, sorry. I got very excited. We both did. Eventually, Boimler decides to rip off the plot from Yes Man, which is a movie where a negative person decides to say yes to everything, which leads to slightly more danger than Boimler anticipated. In the meantime, Beckett Mariner is continuing her training with Commander Ransom, who has decided... Ransom, that's his name, Commander Ransom.
Jeez.
Jack Ransom.
No.
Yep, well...
No.
Yeah, that's his name.
No, I didn't know that. That is so... Okay. I'm all right.
That's amazing.
Jack
I feel like somebody just tried to break into my office.
Can I call it
Jack Ransom.
Jansen? Okay.
Yeah, there we go. In the meantime, Beckett Mariner and Ransom try to fix a space elevator. Lift, but... Oh, space lift?
What was it called? An interstellar lift? What was it called?
God. It was like an interspatial lift.
It was...
Propeller.
It was a thing. They named it something specific, and then that was the joke.
We should
not
really
an elevator, exactly. Not an elevator.
It's not an elevator.
No.
God damn it. Anyway, it's a gravity lift of some sort. And things go awry as Mariner fights against her urges to overrule Captain Jack. Commander Jack.
Ransom.
Whatever. Commander Ransom. Deneé. What did you think of the episode? Overall thoughts and feelings. Did you have a good time?
Yes. This one was a little bit of a slower pace for me in general, which I think is good because I feel like based on our conversation earlier, I'm like, maybe these kind of episodes are needed where nothing like super out of the ordinary happens. All the twists and fun things like being hunted and what that meant, how the captain responded to being hunted, those might be like really surprising things for someone to watch. They weren't surprising for me, of course, because how else would this be happening on a spaceship,
Yeah, exactly.
People would be more concerned if it were real or whatever. And then there just didn't seem to be a lot like, so this episode has everybody like kind of in danger, like literally could lose their lives danger, but there's this casualness about it. And that was evident in the first episode we watched from season 1 as well, which I think is really fun. because these people are like super highly trained. And so they're like, oh, fucko-meter is really messed up compared to my own.
Yeah, this should be worrying.
So,
why is it not?
There's one plot where you've got some of the team that are going down to this, strange hippie free love, but also murderous colony.
It's the classic Star Trek alien race that is lovely and then goes wrong.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of playing onto its own. That makes sense.
It is referencing a specific episode that I'll get into.
Okay. So you've got like that happening, and you've got two members that are like in over their heads. It's pretty evident from the start, but there's also like this very genuine lack of concern about it. And so much so that when Handsome, I'm going to call him Handsome.
Hey,
when
that works.
He like is like, oh no, you're fine, go back in there. You're like, yeah, I guess that's also an option. And so there's this casualness to it where you don't really feel like things are in danger, and then you find out that there is danger. And this did both of those in both sides. So then like back on the ship, Boim's being hunted, and then also is absolutely stabbed pretty badly at the end. Yeah. And it kind of reminded me of the beginning of that very first season when his leg gets cut into by Mariner. So it definitely had all the notes of what I expect the show to be, and I did have a good time for sure.
I'm quite happy for this episode because it was like a blood pressure soother. I didn't have to it wasn't quite as frenetic. There was a bit of slowing down and just enjoying things as they happen. And Lower Decks has a really great pace for going between these episodes that are hyperkinetic and hyperfrenetic, and then something that's a little bit more chilled that needs a little bit more character development. So there was a lot of character development here for Boimler, although I don't think anything will have changed. When we go into the next episode, I think he'll still be the same. And Mariner fighting against her urge to overrule, like what's more important to her? Proving everyone wrong that she doesn't have to rebel, or proving that she still wants to rebel? Like which one wins out? Because she always kind of has to stay true to herself. But
yeah, this one showed us a little bit more about like, again, what this season or what the show in general is doing with the character arcs. So clearly Boimler is working on him not being a stick in the mud, and Mariner is working on being more restrained. So, and that they come to the forefront. This episode is about the two of them for sure.
Yeah. Man, this show just like never stops with the references. My very first note was just a screaming Martok, because the Klingon that is running the D&D game is Chancellor Martok, who is a huge character in Deep Space Nine.
Oh, okay.
So he's just like a really badass warrior. He's so great. And my next note was that the game itself is a reference to it's like a few different Star Trek games. So there was one that specifically like used to have these games that you'd put a DVD or a VHS in, and they will talk along with you as you play through the game, and it will be pre-recorded, and you have to pause it. And
it was clever.
It was really clever. But there's also specifically a Klingon PC game where you're getting initiated into like the Klingon Empire, and Galron, who also got a name check in this episode, is the person that's speaking directly to you in that game as well, and it's like, come with me for glory. And it's so great. Like as soon as I saw it, I was like, they're doing the PC game. It's so great. I should have known better, because Ransom has not been tipped as a hugely intelligent individual. So I had hoped that this was going to be the plan all along, and he was waiting for her
I was wondering.
to rebel and say, there are times where you need to rebel, and don't let my training squash that. But no, he just proved to be a dumbass the whole way through until he ex-machinas the situation at the end. So, and I don't know if we can really sin that, or if it's just in keeping with his character. Because to be fair, it's more on brand for his character to just be incompetent. But I do have issues with how he's the first officer on a starship. But there we go.
Well, clearly he has some skills and some muscle tone,
Yes.
Because he obviously was able to talk his way out of whatever the situation was, which I thought was another clever thing that the show did. So at the very end, when the engineers are struggling, they're in danger, and then he's like, yeah, we should go ahead and go on down there. He rips off his shirt, revealing his physique, which is very attractive to these people. And then he begins to negotiate with them about, and the show cuts away. It's like, but we're not going to show you this conversation.
You've seen this before. That's the A-Team stuff.
Yeah, you've seen the A-Team chats many, many times. Let's cut back over here. And that's refreshing. Although I am curious, he obviously has some set of skills with being able to do that because he was able to negotiate all of their survival.
It's almost saying that like the stuff the A-Team does is like, we've seen it so much in the last 50 years of Star Trek, and it's almost like by the book and superficial. Like, there is a playbook for how you get through this, and the more interesting stuff is what the B-Team screws up.
Right. It's kind of like, so like they're they're up like fixing pipes, and they're like, did you remember to do this, this, and this? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And then they'll be like, hey, did you remember to do this, this, and this with your negotiations? It's like this, they all have a playbook that they're both struggling with figuring out.
I'm going to be the man that just points out the random references all day long. There was an excellent Bolian joke in this where...
yes, I got that one.
Did you get that one?
Yeah, 100%.
I want to hear you talk about it.
Oh, okay. Shit. So there was this reference. But what part was it at, Ian? Just to make sure that
I'll remind you a little bit of it. You'll get it. This is near the beginning when Tendi comes out of the shower. And they're talking about this captain that has been promoted super, super quick.
Oh, yeah,
Boimler is jealous of.
Yes. That was a great reference to a ship that is has been referenced before.
Nope.
Yeah, it sure has. You just don't remember it.
Possible, but nope.
Sunflower ship. What was the name of that ship? Nope.
I can't remember.
Oh, damn it. I need to write something down for predictions. So you go ahead. I've got something that just popped into my mind for predictions.
I'll take it from here. So there is a great joke where Boimler says that the captain that has been promoted very quickly has stacked his entire bridge crew with Bolians. And our immediate reaction to that is supposed to be, oh man, what a jerk, what an idiot. Bolians are the worst, because Bolians are kind of the butt of a lot of jokes. But Tendi then says, oh wow, that's so great, that's such a smart idea. And Boimler is like, I agree, isn't that awesome? And I immediately felt guilty, because I was like, oh no. Like, I was immediately thinking he's made a horrible mistake, and they're saying that Bolians are great, and they should be crewing the ship. And apparently I'm Star Trek racist. And that is such a subtle little joke that the writer absolutely knew that we were going to get super judgmental and be like, oh, fucking Bolians, and then just turned it on its head and was like, no, Bolians are cool, all right?
Well, I have a prediction about the Bolians for later, which is why I couldn't really go into that.
So are you saying Bolians or Bolians?
Bowl, like that you eat out of.
Is it good? Nice. My last thought was just the ending with Martok, where Boimler goes all in and goes up to the bar and demands blood. Why don't Martok is just like, the bartender rips off your arm and kills you with it. It is not an honourable death because you died by your own hand. What genius. Dying by your own hand, which is a Klingon thing. Because you were beaten to death with your own hand. It's
my God.
Great.
You did not die an honorable death because technically you've died by your own hand. That's just clever writing. Very, very clever.
Writing. So clever. Love it. This is such a great outlet for a unique type of Star Trek writing that you're not going to get anywhere else. No Ambassador Deneé this week. Either the Lint conversation actually pissed her off and she's making a Starship Linterprise, or she's still stuck in the transporter buffer. We will have to confirm exactly what happened to her next week, but she will return next week. Before we get into reviewing Season 3, Episode 3 of Star Trek Lower Decks, this is an awesome time to ask, what do you think of this season of Lower Decks so far?
I haven't seen a single episode of this show.
You are a get off my ship. I will make an entire new ship, but this is going to be made out of boogers. You are in charge of the USS Booger Prize.
Thank you. That's fine. I'll eat that up, man. So I called the crossover before it was ever announced on this show. If you go back and listen, I was the one like, oh, these take place during the same time. How cool would it be if there was a Strange New Worlds Lower Decks crossover where we saw the Lower Decks people in live action?
I'm so excited.
And I think that's been announced, right?
100%, 100% announced. So,
that's so exciting. But so let me ask you a question. Do you think Jack Quaid is going to play the real life Boimler? Or are they going to find somebody that looks like?
They've already confirmed that the voice actors will be playing their own characters.
All right. I mean, that makes the most sense.
100%. Yeah.
Even though not all of them look exactly like their characters.
No, not all of them. They don't.
But yeah, that makes the most sense.
Especially the dolphins. The dolphins don't look anything like what the Delphi characters look like.
Yeah.
Nope.
That's true.
That's why I don't think it's going to be the full crew. I think they will be quite selective, and there's going to be some.
Do you think it'll be more cameo, or do you think it'll be for a majority of an episode?
No, I think it's a full crossover. I think it's like Arrowverse, full CW, how they do it. I love it so much. Yeah. My interesting thoughts is how will it? Are they going to address? I don't think they can. Are they going to address in Strange New Worlds that it's animated? Like when Strange New Worlds. Like, I was under the impression that Strange New Worlds, some of them would be animated and go into lower decks. But I don't know how meta they'll be about addressing, oh, hey, are we in a, like, everything everywhere all at once? Are we in an animated universe now?
The problem with that is then you genuinely have to start talking about a different universe.
Correct.
As soon as you are, in lower decks might be able to get, Strange New Worlds couldn't get away with that.
No,
lower decks might be able to get away with that, but I don't know how. Yeah. I don't know how you don't just break everybody's brain and
I don't think
make it mean nothing. So,
in fact, the more I think about it, I think it's more likely that they'll just turn up in person, and they just it's just crazy if they acknowledge it.
Now, I should say, if somebody can fact check and go back and see that, listen to that conversation and see how it went. I have a tendency to take credit for things that aren't my own. So it's very possible somebody else said this, and I'm like, yeah, that was my idea, because my brain does that sometimes. I have a very arrogant brain in that way. Like if it's a good idea, I figure I had it.
I did that. I came up with that.
Right. Yeah.
At the minute, Deneé is just screaming at him. You motherfucker!
That was me. I did that.
So this week, the crew of the Cerritos team up with another California-class ship to deal with a diplomatic snafu, or the aftermath of a diplomatic snafu between some Survey team people and an alien species of rocks, and shenanigans happen because they have stumbled across some crystals that bring your dreams, nightmares, and everything to life.
Well, the rocks are just designed or exist to bring your fantasies to reality. But then once they're broken, then the other things happen. So.
And other things happen on top of that.
Yes.
So initial thoughts, feelings, emotions, enjoyability. What were your thoughts on this episode, Aaron?
I love everything about Lower Decks. I could watch any Lower Decks episode and have a good time. Because here's the thing, like even if the plot or the story or whatever isn't, making sense or engaging to me,
which
or
they know it isn't.
I'm just so enamored by the humor. And I just, it's just a lot of fun. So I had a great time with it. Add to that the fact that I think it is, a plot that's interesting and touches on, things we've seen before. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I really, really enjoyed this episode. It was kind of a bit calmer, a little bit like last week as well. It wasn't quite as 1,000 miles an hour. It just feels like the show has really found its groove. It's found its oomph. It's just settling into almost like not having to prove itself and just come up with some original adventures that are still very, very familiar. Like a lot of this is like stuff we've seen. It's almost like they get episodes from TNG and TOS and stuff and then just take half from there, and then make something completely new. So yeah. I really, really enjoyed it as well. I think the biggest cameo this week was Dr. Leah Brahms. Did you remember Leah Brahms?
No.
So I wonder if
I can record that and I can just put it on a button.
Oh, do you remember that?
My reference meter is low. So yes,
referometer. Yeah, that makes sense. So Leah Brahms is the biggie one. So she appeared in 2 episodes of TNG, and this is the lady that Rutherford imagines, and she basically helped design the Enterprise D and helped to design the new warp core, and really kind of creepily. Geordi creates a hologram of her to help him solve a problem and then kind of gets a bit jiggy with her. And then a couple of seasons later, the real Leah comes to help with a problem and finds his program of her.
So that's a direct reference then, like her being a fantasy to a
100%, to an engineer. Yeah, it's exactly the same. So she's kind of
engineer with an eyepiece. That'll make
exactly.
sense.
Yeah. So it was really fun to see like a follow up to that and to get the same. I just love that they get the same actors back as well. I know I wouldn't have known the voice necessarily. It's very kind of, there's nothing too unique about it, but it's a really, really nice nod to bring everybody back. But I think my favorite part was, I think it's actually the Tendi stuff, which is interesting. It's that defining the science officer as not just somebody that knows all of the science, but has to be brave enough to stand up to the captain as well. Because the science officers always kind of get the they do get the short end of the stick. They have the answers, but the captain is always like, let's go, enough of the science, let's get on with it.
It's interesting that's your favorite. Like the B plot did nothing for me in this episode. Like I again, I'm always going to enjoy myself, but that plot line was really dry to me. Like it didn't seem to milk a ton of humor. A lot of the situational stuff that they cut back to with that plot line didn't really make me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
The whole fighting over the rock thing. It wasn't that funny to me. Like I don't like it was just like I don't know. I think it was supposed to be one of those things that got funnier the longer it went, and it just never was funny to begin with to me. That. So that plot line was not my favorite. But yeah, I get what they were trying to do there. So and that's probably why it's interesting to you, because it's more kind of technical and detailed oriented.
Yeah, it's the rock thing it didn't get me either. I see what they were going for, but it is just that idea that Spock is almost like the butt of the joke on the crew, even though he has the answers, and it's just that stereotype of the science officer. It's not just about science, it's about promoting science and saying, yeah, you want to shoot it with phasers, but here's the actual solution, and here's the more complex stuff that we're looking at. And scientists, by stereotypical nature, aren't the most forward of people. Like, maybe they're not as forceful when they're more like kind of sitting in the background. So she has to find that balance of, yeah, the science is right, I'm really confident about that, but being brave enough to push that forward.
The wish me luck, wish me facts thing was interesting to me.
Oh, it's so good. I do that. I hate saying good luck. I hate it because I don't mean it. I don't want luck for you. I want success.
So let's go ahead and mark off the bingo board. Aaron wants to have a deep philosophical conversation. But the luck thing is an interesting one. As a person of faith, when I grew up, like, learning how God related to the world and different things like that, we were taught not to say luck, because there is no such thing as luck. Because if you have an omniscient, omnipotent God, then everything is intentional.
By design.
Everything is designed. So you would say, it literally had a teacher at my Christian high school who, instead of good luck, said providential good fortune.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. I'm going to use that. I both love and wish we had more of the big dragon creature that just appeared when they smashed all of the orbs initially, and there was that big super colorful dragon. That's from the original the animated series.
Oh, interesting.
They can animate whatever the heck they want, so they use dragons quite a bit. I believe it's a Macaulay Culkin. It's a Macaulay Culkin dragon. Yeah, okay. It's a Coca can or something like that.
Release the Coca-Cola can.
Release the Coca-Cola can. Yeah, it's a Pepsi dragon.
One of the things I did think was interesting and a little bit meta, which this show has done before, but the idea that that their ship is well known for all their shenanigans, and that leads to them having kind of a competition to see who could do better or whatever. It is really interesting to think of that, the fact that so much is happening to them, that the other parts of the fleet are just like, why are they always like, how are they always into stuff? Like asking that question. They even said something like, you're like the Enterprise, but for
the Cali class ships
or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, because the Enterprise would be the same way. It's like, how is the Enterprise always at the middle of all of this stuff?
Always in these shenanigans. Yeah. So it is true. And it's because it's a TV show, Aaron. I don't know if you realized, but it would be quite dull if we were following the ship that did nothing.
What? I'm this is a what show?
I mean, I would love it to be a reality TV show, but it's not, sadly. Man, I want that show. I want to live on the Enterprise. I don't know that I actually do want to live on the Enterprise, but I feel like I do. Well, we joined the crew of the Cerritos Burrito as the engineer. Yeah, I stole it from you. I got there before you did. We joined them as the engineering team. Are absolutely exhausted from. She's got a bottom lip out because I stole her burrito.
Took my burrito.
Yeah, I did.
It's my first day back, and you took my burrito.
Well, someone had to do it last week because Aaron was chucking out churros and something else.
Were the churros from last episode?
No. Okay. He said Cerritos burritos. There was another food that he mentioned that I now can't think of.
I mean, was it burrito-esque? Or was it like completely random, like a potato or something? Oh, okay.
Potatoes? Anyway, we joined them as the engineering team, are extremely exhausted from fixing the ship after some shenanigans with an artifact that turned the ship ancient. And they are forced to go to a relaxation ship. Meanwhile, our lower deckers tried to get into a lottery and tried to rig it so that they would get a new ship on one of the more prestigious decks, trying to beat the Delta shift people. Once you finished swirling around those decks in your mouth, what did you think of the episode? Overall thoughts and feelings?
Oh my gosh. This one kind of gave me a few moments where I was remembering what it was like to have to, because like when they went to go for the new room, which the lottery for the new room, I was reminded of working at a call center where you were ranked by this algorithm of all of your ability to do your job and be there on time and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there was a lottery for who would get the best shift.
Yeah.
Whenever it was like a shift thing. And I
know it's the best room.
Was triggered.
Oh.
I know, but for me, when I worked at the call center, it was like we had a lottery and like this whole ranking thing for getting the best shift.
Oh no.
And so I'm watching this episode, I'm just like, oh God, just transported back in time. But I actually like that about the episode because it reminded me that's what it's like when you're, in the trenches of a job like this. So I enjoyed this episode quite a lot.
Amazing. Now,
yeah, this was a fun one.
I really enjoyed it as well. I love getting in the guts of the story. What? Go on.
Especially when they went into the holodeck.
I knew you would love that scene.
Oh my God, that slayed me. There's so many things that happened that were just like, oh my God. When she takes her shirt down to show her boob.
Shanks is just like, will you put those away, Diane?
So funny.
I love that her name is Diane. It's so great.
I know. It's so great. Like, I didn't know that they were together. Did you know that they were together or a couple?
Yes. So there's an episode in season 1, I think. It's season 1 or season 2, where the entire crew, like, I can't remember exactly what happens, but they all get drunk or something. And basically, like, Shax and Tana are just, like, naked and doing it just in the corridor. And, like, Boimler is naked in another room. And we're like, oh, hey, they're together. And it kind of exposes that they're a couple. And they are the sweetest couple. Like, they're so great.
I liked that moment because it was like, it's not like basically, yes, sure, I like this whole fantasy fuck thing. But at the same time, we need to talk about my feelings sometimes too.
I know.
It was great. I loved that.
We never even talked about it.
Another thing I liked about this episode was at the beginning. So there's this mask and there's this just casualness to it, right? Where like our crew of misfits or whatever is so casually responding to, it's a mask again. And then here comes Captain just like superhero floating through wearing a mask. And as she passes by, the ship transforms into this old like ancient relic.
Yeah.
And the engineers eventually have to take it apart and they're all looking tired because they've had to like deal with, I guess, the captain putting the mask on again because it's a recurring issue. But I love that it reminded me of watching Strange New Worlds when it was transformed because of that being.
Oh, the D&D episode. Yeah, with the Elysium Kingdom, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so fun. So that is, unsurprisingly, a direct reference to a TNG episode where the Enterprise, I think we've talked about it before, but the Enterprise finds this massive comet, and then inside the comet is an asteroid, and then inside the asteroid is a meteor, and inside the meteor is another comet. No, inside the comet is an artifact that's like a museum, and when they interface with it, it gradually starts turning objects on the Enterprise into artifacts, and eventually turns the entire ship into like a recreation of this ancient civilization, and the idea is to preserve its civilization by turning another ship into an example of it. And Data kind of gets possessed by the program as well. And like 10,000 people are inhabiting Data's mind. And it's really, really cool. But it's like one of the most notorious episodes of TNG. Like people hate that episode for some reason because it was in season 7. Things
is it like
are going
sex
a bit
candle
bonkers.
Episode?
It's kind of that level of notoriety, but I love it. I think it's such a fun episode, and Brent Spiner gets to really stretch his legs quite a bit. It's crazy. It's so good, but people just like it for some reason.
Then we go to this like super fun spa where it's all designed to help people to relax, and there's like a puppy room and a mud room and a beat stuff up room, And the engineers end up creating a device that will magically remove stress, essentially. And at the end, the person who runs the spa would not have a job, and so she demands that it just be yeeted out into space. I thought that was really clever and fun. The idea that there's like these de-stress spaces in space to kind of go to.
Yeah, like mini vices that are, because it's stressful.
It is stressful, but but like watching the engineers, so like they're doing this tour, and she turns to her engineers to say like, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. And they're all like disassembling a door because they can't stop working. I loved it so much.
It feels so familiar. Like I'll bring my laptop around at the weekend and I was like, what are you doing, you workaholic? What are you doing? Well, just in case I have like a spare 5 minutes where I can like do some writing or something. It can happen.
The other thing that was going on in this episode I really enjoyed was the race. So we've got our team that are trying to race to this one console to be able to rig this lottery for this new rooms, which turns out to be 1 room instead of 4.
Yeah.
So they're racing through the ship, and we're getting to see all these fun parts of the ship that you mentioned, Ian. But then they also eventually run into the Delta crew, who they have a rivalry with, and they're having this kind of fun exchange. It turns out that the Delta are a bunch of assholes, and they backstab them, and they get on to do the thing.
Did you notice how they all look exactly the same as
each other?
As each other.
Yeah, they're
so
all
good.
spitting images of each other, which is great.
That was a nice touch.
They had this back and forth when we thought that they were all potentially bonding, where they're sharing these stories back and forth. That was really fun. Well, and even just our crew thinking about, before the Delta crew showed up, they were thinking about what they would program the door to say to welcome someone else into the room. And they're sort of come. That was just really fun.
Man, I tried that at uni, and it just doesn't work if you're not a Star Trek nerd. So somebody would we lived in like a shared house, and in my room, and somebody would knock on the door, and I'm like, come. And I was like, what? Come in, it's fine.
They would think that you're having a personal moment.
Yes. This is how I demand my partner.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bad time. That's why I just don't think that you should make the word come when you're. It's a
you
bad
shouldn't
recipe.
make the word come.
You should make the door
something else.
The trigger for the door be that word. It should be
the trigger. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing
everything
that pushes them over
way,
the threshold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enter.
See, again, that's what I was going to say. Like, what's an alternative? But everything turns into kink.
Yeah. Arrive. Yeah. All of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No. Open a little bit too much.
Yeah,
maybe it's like a little too far.
Yeah.
Get in my room, which sounds like womb.
Nope.
Yeah. You could actually program it to say womb. And then but people would just say it to where people wouldn't know that you're saying room.
Come in my womb. Right. Okay.
That scene at the holodeck was so incredible.
It's so fun. I love they turn the safety protocols off, and then Boimler just has a bullet just right in front of his face. It's like, let's just move that up.
Oh God, I was not expecting that, because she says the cat
Ta'ana, yeah,
says we can do the nasty on the counter while the hostages watch.
I know, it's so
and
great.
I was like, holy shit.
That was a sentence that a cat just said. Love it.
Let's say that this was the first episode that you introduced them to. This would, if this show is not appropriate for someone, it will happen in this somewhere, because there's enough going on, whether it's like too much, too fast, too kinky, too forward, too silly. Like, there's so many ways that Boimler should be dead in this episode. Ding. Like, if something's going to bother you about the show that you can't watch it again, it's going to maybe happen in this episode.
If you have a trigger,
this is a good one to start.
Yeah, exactly. This is a good one to go for.
Yeah. At the very beginning, when it's showing the engineers are so stressed out, and the captain is kind of yelling at the crew, the calm guy turns around and slaps the security guy.
Billups, the chief engineer.
And then bursts into tears.
Slaps him again.
And Billups is like, just let it all out, buddy. And he just weakly reaches up and just slaps him. I died. I absolutely died laughing.
Shax just absolutely takes it like a trooper. It's like, he reminds me of Worf so much.
Yeah.
It's like, fine, I'll take it.
Yeah, all right, whatever. It's just this
This was out of line, but just hit me again. It's fine.
Honestly, that I related to that too. The stress of the engineers just like falling apart and being like, I just got that.
Oh, God. Oh, great. More work. Let's go. I love it. I'm here. Let's go.
Oh, my God.
Bam! Slap.
So good.
It's so great. I think that is everything. Oh, other than them getting naked.
Oh, yes, to save Boimler. They weren't naked.
They were nearly naked. Like, let's just take all our clothes off and make a rope. That's what you would do.
I mean, if you were saving your friend, you would probably want to use your bra too, though. Because that's definitely one that could be used as like a whip and an anchor.
That's got like a whole extra
holster. Yeah, like there's extra stuff going on there.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm not saying that I needed to see animated titties today. I'm just saying that this would have been an appropriate time to introduce them.
Yeah. Nobody needs to, but anyway, we'll leave that there.
That's a sin, actually. That's my first sin.
What, that we didn't see animated? We didn't see the cat titties. We didn't see the animated titties. We didn't get any titties this episode. Weak. Absolutely weak. This week, we see Boimler and Mariner on recruitment duty on a random planet, because what else are we going to do with them this week? And most importantly, we see some threads unravel as Rutherford is possessed by
himself.
Damn it, just spoiled it. Possessed by a strange presence that may have secrets to his past. Overall thoughts and feelings, Ambassador.
Let's first just talk about how you're like, spoiler, if you're listening to the show and you don't want to be spoiled, this isn't the show for you.
This is a bad place.
This is not a good place.
Hold the suspense for a couple more minutes.
Moments, seconds.
I wanted the reveal. I wanted to get the big reveal.
There we go. Yeah, not my favorite show. Episode, rather.
Oh, interesting. Okay, tell me why. Was it too serious?
I mean, it got better for me once Boimler lost his shit. Then I was like, okay, here we go. And then that was really, really sort of towards the end, you know, like the setup for the Rutherford reveal for me. And this is probably because I haven't spent a lot of time with Rutherford, whom I'm calling Robotford.
I mean, that's perfect.
Yeah. So I haven't spent a lot of time, you know, again, I only watched the first episode and then the last episode of the, what season was it? Second season. So I missed basically 2 entire seasons before starting this series. So what I am lacking is a relationship with these characters outside of essentially what I see week to week. So I feel like for those who have been watching this since season 1, this is a huge episode because there's more information finally being given for Robotford. However, for myself, I'm like, get to the point.
I'd be interested to watch season 1 and season 2 with you, because I don't know that it changed very much for me, because he isn't a huge part of those seasons. Like, there's some running gags where he will go on dates and be overachieving and whatnot. But the setup for him having hidden memories is literally in the finale of season 2. Like, we don't know that there's anything wrong with him until then.
Oh,
so we've only been waiting for this since then. So
really, it hasn't been that much of a build-up then.
No, not at all. So I think you're just feeling whatever this episode was making you feel. I don't think it would have been improved by watching another 2 seasons.
I feel like if I was to rewatch this, I might be able to pick up some more things that I enjoyed. And there is a lot that I did enjoy about this one, but just my general thoughts and feelings, I wasn't as in on this one. What about you? Because this has had the things I liked about this, I'm thinking you were like super amped about, which is all the references. I mean, this was just like someone threw up references. So
man, there is not a passing second or like side comment that can't be a reference. And all the ones you spotted, I think there'll be just as many that you missed. So the B plot with Mariner and Boimler didn't really do anything for me at all, and so that's in this instance. But overall, that was a little bit slow until Boimler exploded, which is kind of like the go-to thing, is make Boimler explode to make something entertaining. But the A plot with Rutherford, I really, really enjoyed. But I'm a sucker for picking up a hanging thread and developing some backstory and an overarching thing.
At the very end of this episode, my thoughts were really and that's really interesting to me, and I can't kind of stop, like my brain's just cycling through. So it's Mariner, and she receives this transmission from the ex-Starfleet person who left to kind of become a rogue archaeologist, I think, that essentially steals things from museums to return them to their planets, if I was understanding that correctly.
It's to sell them back, yeah, exactly, and make a profit. So she's based on another character called Vash, and I don't know why they didn't just use her, because it's the same exact person minus the Starfleet history. So it was an interesting choice to not just use somebody we already know, but hey, create somebody new.
So she calls that person calls Mariner and essentially is like, hey, listen, if you ever don't want to be in Starfleet, give me a call. And Mariner saves her contact information rather than deleting it, and sort of glances to the back of the ship, watches the planet disappear as they go into warp. And I got the impression that Mariner would consider moving outside of Starfleet. Like maybe that is a good move for her, just her personality.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
It does. And what I love about that ending with the potential to leave Starfleet is, you know, this show, just like all Star Trek, is in its own world. It's in its own ass. And this episode is like forefront. We are in our own ass. And they are talking about, like, you know, they have all of these aliens coming up and like questioning them, which is like showing, you know, all the different ways that Starfleet can and cannot be perceived, et cetera, et cetera. There's conversations. The Boimler loses his shit, which is like probably my favorite part of this episode, and, you know, goes to the defense of it. So you're hearing maybe all the fandom fighting back and forth. This is like the forums on display in one episode in a way. And this show is taking time to say, we see all of this. We are in our own ass. We're in our own world. We know it. We're exploiting it in this new show. We're getting laughs about it. We're taking it seriously, and we're also not. And, you know, one might think this is a big ego, but they put that aside and they bring this like storyline to the forefront that there's more besides Starfleet. And what's cool about that is that, you know, Star Trek, it's doing what it does. Star Trek has created this whole universe, and there's Starfleet, and our story is firmly in Starfleet, and they're acknowledging that there's more, but yet they're going to stay in their lane because they do it well.
My number one top longest note from this episode is that I love that it explored that Starfleet is basically a military organization. Like we kind of forget that and brush it under the carpet, but when they said, hey, look, you're just a veiled space navy, I was like, yeah, it's basically the Navy, because it is the armed force of authority that Earth and the Federation has. It has it has the ranks of like the military as well. It is literally a military institution, but its primary goal is to explore space. But it spends a lot of its time defending instead of actually exploring. Like, we fall into that. And it's one of the things that Gene Roddenberry really pushed against. Was he wanted to focus, from all I've heard, seen, read, whatever, focus on the space exploration stuff and really butted against the battles, the wars, and all of that stuff, which is why Deep Space Nine was so controversial, because that wasn't about exploration. That is stay put and defend a war. That's pretty much what Deep Space Nine ended up being. And I love it. Like, Star Trek can do all of those different things, but it's so cool that this episode says Starfleet isn't the only option. It's where, like you say, it's where we like to be. It's where we're comfortable. It's what we like to explore. But there are all of these other organizations. There are civilians doing it. There are archaeologists. There are freelancers. There's just mining consortiums. There's the collectors.
And they all have
all of these people. Yeah. And it's like, come join our cause. Come do it. Like, Starfleet isn't the only option. I really, really liked that we're picking up on the Robotford thing. I didn't expect it to be like the dedicated episode like quite so early on. I thought they may like trickle it in a little bit more, but I think with like the 20-minute format, they can't afford to do that too much. So I think they're just, hey, this is when we're going to deal with this, and then we'll pick it up a little bit later. But yeah, I love that they picked it up. I love that they handled it. I love that he now has another mission to try and find out who this mystery Starfleet officer is that seems to be behind his shenanigans. So, I mean, I love a conspiracy, and Starfleet seems to be full of sketchy people doing sketchy things. So I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's like they didn't solve it, but they gave a little bit more information. They let the Rutherford know that he has an entire history that he forgot, that there was some kind of an accident for something he was working on, maybe for someone else. And then as probably a cover-up, they gave him an implant and wiped his memory. And we see shadowed figures. They are Starfleet because you can see the Delta symbol on their chest. So
it's an older uniform.
It was a way to kind of say, this is more about you, but also disappear his past person entirely so he can't access those memories. He has to start over again. And that's a clever writing way to know that his brain doesn't have that information anymore. It's also very convenient, but it's understandable.
Super convenient. One of my favourite, more subtle references was that when Rutherford said that he's having the repeating nightmare, and Tendy's like, "Oh, is this the one where where you're in an alternate timeline with Kirk and Spock, and they have a believable cinematic chemistry?"
So trolly.
It's so trolly.
That's what I mean by this show is like in on its own ass. Like
I love it.
Totally fine with making fun of itself, and I really appreciate that.
I love that so much because it's a reference to the new Star Trek movies, which is Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto's Kirk and Spock, who do have better chemistry than Shatner and Nimoy, because Nimoy and Shatner famously didn't get along very well. I love that subtle reference to, like, he's dreaming about an alternate timeline that they shouldn't know about, which is, oh man, that tickled me. I love it. The parasites that took over the admirals and crawled into their butts. Through the butts. So they were meant to be the big
Those
bad.
Are called butticides.
Butticides. Parabutts? Nope. They were meant to be.
Well, were there two people? I don't know. Because then it'd be a parabutts.
Hang on.
So it'd be a parabutts. So.
I guess all parabutts, because you have to have two cheeks. Yeah?
I mean, anyway, there's probably an alien with one single cheek.
Oh, I guarantee there is. But then where's the... Never mind.
Down in the... They still have a taint.
Still underneath? They still have the taint? It's still there?
Yeah. So they got the rounded ass cheek.
Parataintocytes. Nice. Ambassador, can you give us the plot synopsis?
Okay, you dropped this on me at the last second.
You volunteered! You said, I've got this, Captain.
Yeah, I super got it. All right, so in this episode, we have so much happening. There's... people breaking into ships. There's people not breaking into ships. There's gambling happening. There's friendships being formed. There's people, the Kardashians.
No.
Who? What are they?
Cardassians.
The Cardassians.
But they're not in this episode.
Oh, okay. There's this war. It was dominating, and the bad stuff happened with that. And now we're trying to be friendly, and we're bringing some alcohol. And for some reason, the burrito has to bring the alcohol when another ship can't, because it's got to go to a brown hole, which we all know is just a reference to a butthole, and it's supposed to be funny, and it really wasn't that funny to me. But we're not talking about the show. This is the synopsis part. Fuck. So then they all get together on Deep Space Nine, and the people, not the Cardassians, but the other ones that are different.
Another gamma quadrant species that I can't remember the name of.
Okay. Then why are you talking about the Cardassians at all?
Because they built Deep Space Nine.
So?
And we're all part of the Dominion War and stuff. They're the big bads.
But anyway, so these people show up, they got a bomb. And shenanigans happen where the negotiations for peace don't negotiate peacefully. But thanks to plot conveniences, everything turns out just fine. And also, we got to face our friends.
Welcome to Deneé Describes an Episode Perfectly. Deneé was like kind of quiet through most of the episode while I was freaking out and loving all of it. Until we got to, like, the second Mariner starts firing. She's just giggling in the corner. And I'm like, you absolute sadist. Like, this is why we struggle to make friends, because you're just like, I'm going to phaser him. Yay!
Okay, so I had a couple of notes that were like, you don't know what you're missing until you've seen Ian watch an episode of Star Trek, because he giggles like a little child. So it's like spaceships on screen, space ports on screen, cool, like really interesting, like, I don't know, flights of ships on screen, different references on screen, and he's giddy and giggling, and I'm just quiet, I'm just watching or whatever. But when Mariner gets permission from her girlfriend to just be a total bitch and turn up her sass to level 10, I was so happy. I was like giddy, genuinely and truly giddy.
It's like, I think
I was there giggling like, it was the best. It was absolutely the best part. Hold on, there was a quote. What did she say? That she was living out her dreams.
Oh,
What did she say?
manifesting her dreams or something? Actualizing
her dreams. I was dead.
I was like kind of coin flip. I was like, maybe Deneé isn't going to enjoy this, and she's just losing her shit and giggling as all of these people are getting phasered, because I think Mariner is actualizing your dreams. Like, I think you've been many times in a room filled of people that you're like, I could destroy them, but I don't like that person that I become when I destroy them. So I'm going to just sit in the corner and drink my tea. And really, you just want to phase them all.
I think she got on the table and she's like, everyone shut the fuck up. And I was like, yes!
Shoot the ceiling with a phaser.
Claim your power. Just say what's on your mind. And if they can't deal with it, then that's all right.
Yeah.
What about you? What was your favorite? I think I know your favorite part.
And this is the problem. The episode didn't get better than this for me. That cold open is, I think, the best cold open I've ever seen to an episode. It just suckered me in, and it's not fair. So, I mean, because it's not just like the glory shot of, well, we have a mission and we've been redirected, so let's go to Deep Space Nine. Like, we all knew they were going to Deep Space Nine at some point, or like the nerds.
Did we?
The nerds. Like,
yeah,
it was in the trailer and stuff.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's fine. If you were making notes, that's fine. But it just, and then just the music started. The music, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum, bum bum bum, and then do 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 do, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. It's an incredibly underrated theme tune. It's so great. And then the animated HD-ness of Deep Space Nine is so great.
Oh my god, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And then Shaq's just like slamming it immediately, just calling it, because I'll explain the Dominions and the Cardassians in a minute. It's fine. But right now, hey, what are we going to do? Let's just circle the pylons and look impressive while we're stalling to come aboard. And then they repeat the joke, and it's so
slayed him.
Funny. It's like, well, we've done our lap. What should we do? Keep going. Okay. It's such a slam on like just the opening credits, just being like, what are they doing? Just doing all of these glory shots of Deep Space Nine. And because like usually the openings are like really kinetic and you have the ship zooming about, you can't do that on a stationary space station. So like, what do we do? Okay, glory shots. It's such a great cold
It's just
open.
docking porn. Good. Either that or it's just moving.
Docking porn is something very different.
It really is very different.
Goodness.
Please
do not Google docking
Okay, hold on a second. Can we do like a really quick note for editing?
Yep.
Okay, here's my note for editing for you. Can we insert some sort of like warning that cuts in right then in the show and goes like just something that's like an announcement? Maybe even ask Jeremy if he'll just record like CinemaSins does not endorse Googling docking porn.
No, it does endorse docking porn, but it doesn't endorse Googling docking porn. There we go.
Like, wouldn't that be so funny if it just like
amazing.
cut away?
Yep. So the Dominion War was between like the basically like the Bajorans, who was like Kira, who was the one in red.
Oh, we got to talk about that.
In command of Deep Space Nine. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Kira. I think I remember her.
So she is in Deep Space Nine. She's one of the main characters, voiced by Nana Visitor.
Is she the one that's married to Tuvok? No, Odo.
Yes, they don't get married, but they're in a relationship.
Odo. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
Nope, that's not who I was thinking of. Because I remembered her face a little bit, but I never watched Deep Space Nine, so.
Oh, okay. No, then you wouldn't. I mean, you know Odo, the security chief, though.
I do
the
know Odo.
shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, the Federation basically steps in and says, hey, Cardassians, you can't suppress the Bajorans anymore, you must leave. And they decide to leave. That combined with the Bajorans kind of kicking some butt and stuff. But the Deep Space Nine was built by the Cardassians as a mining thing. But the Bajorans reclaimed it, and with Starfleet decided to like kind of keep it. And then a wormhole suddenly opened, and it brought all of this tourism and all of this money and stuff to Bajor. But then it also brought an evil race called the Dominion, who was like a conglomeration of the founders, the Jem'Hadar, and another race that I can't remember right now.
Those guys.
And they came in and started like invading and shit, teamed up with the Cardassians, and then the Klingons joined in as well and became enemies of the Federation. And then
no, the Klingons joined the Dominion?
Yaha. I know, right?
Oh, how was your feeling?
Because a shapeshifter pretended to be Gowron and redirected all of the Klingons to do bad stuff. But then eventually there was a big war. The Romulans joined in, and it's fake.
But which side? Like you said that they joined in.
The Romulans joined us.
Oh,
the Romulans joined our side.
Okay, all right.
So, but then eventually the Klingons rejoined us once they figured out the bad Gowron was bad, and then. It all ended, and then Cisco jumped into the wormhole, and we haven't seen him since.
All right, cool. Who's Cisco?
Captain Cisco, Benjamin Cisco, played by Avery Brooks. He was the captain of Deep Space Nine, basically. Commander, then captain. Anyway, that's a potted history of Deep Space Nine. Did you actually enjoy it going in dry, going in without any other knowledge of Deep Space Nine? I'm sorry. Docking has ruined me.
Okay, well, do we need to take another little break?
No.
To answer your question, no, I don't think I needed to have seen anything on Deep Space Nine. Here's what was interesting. When the Kieran person appeared, it did the extra long second shot on that character where
with the reflection of the wormhole in the window.
Yes.
Oh, it was so pretty.
But because I was distracted by why are we seeing so much screen time of this person? I didn't notice the wormhole. I was like, oh, this must be someone important. This must be a cameo. And I can hear the echoes of 1,000 fans being like, oh my God,
it's Kieran Reese, yes.
So clearly I'm going to miss some things, but I knew who Quark was, obviously.
Which is, Quark kind of transcends all of Deep Space Nine and Star Trek. He's managed to appear everywhere. One of his franchises is in Picard.
That's fun. Wait, did we know
cool.
that?
When they go to Stardust City, and they do the external shot, there's a big Quark's bar.
I missed
lost
that.
it.
That is amazing. I totally missed that. No, see, Quark I knew, and it's interesting to see Quark animated, and I did have a little bit of that moment. So I didn't know the theme music to Deep Space Nine, but I knew that. But I knew that you were really excited about it because you were screaming. You were happily screaming from across the room.
It's so great. And I'm just we've been begging for a HD remaster of Deep Space Nine. It probably won't ever happen. This animated version of Deep Space Nine is the closest we're going to get to a HD version of it. And it's so pretty.
It was really pretty. Yeah. And that's the thing is, so there's things about it that are really pretty that I can appreciate. And I can even appreciate that there's characters I don't know because center screen are still the characters that I'm here to watch, which is, our haphazard crew doing what they're doing. And there's enough happening on the burrito that was interesting for me this episode. The stuff with Boing Boing wasn't really super interesting to me, except for that I know that it played onto what is the name of their race? The Quark.
The Ferengi?
The Ferengi.
Yeah.
That they're really greedy. And so that was kind of fun to see them play into the Ferengi, just their greed
and stuff.
Yeah. And so to see that kind of play out, and that he was being really lucky. I didn't expect him to be lucky. I was expecting him to just.
I have issues with that. That's in my sinning. There's a big bit on the Dabo
he's
table.
Just done really well, and he's not actually cheating. It just was going well for him as he was gambling, and then to turn it all in at the end for this. Gift card to the store, and then it comes out in full Ferengi gear.
So great. And he would have left the Latinum behind anyway because Starfleet don't need it. They don't need money.
The other thing though that I did find myself genuinely enjoying was to see Quark animated because there's something that they can't do in the live action, which is move his eyebrows, right? Because it's just this, it's this headpiece that sits still. Yeah. So when he's animated, all of a sudden he's arching his brow and stuff.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Fascinated by it because there's expressions that we never got from our Quark. Our Quark, it was just this big old headpiece, foam latex thing that they did. And maybe it moved a little bit. But for the actor to really express through eyebrows, it has to be such a specific application for those prosthetics. And I learned this by watching Face Off, which is one of my favorite reality TV shows. Yeah. And so for the people underneath there to be able to really animate and move their eyebrows around, but that entire forehead piece is one huge piece. Yeah. So to see Quark be extra animated was kind of delightful.
That's so interesting. I need to rewatch it now. I didn't even think of that.
Because Quark for me was always pretty deadpan.
Oh, always. Yeah, this is the most animated we've ever seen him.
But that's what I mean. So it was a little jarring in a way because I'm watching him really express. Is
that what Ferengis do?
And he was ducking behind the bar when the race shows up that's coming for peace talks or whatever they're coming for. The race we can't remember because we didn't.
I think they're called the Karami.
Okay, that sounds right.
Yeah.
So when the Karami show up, they end up, pulling the curtain back, and Quark has essentially stolen their technology to create this replicator drink that he's saying that he created. And so that's sort of like the big ha of the show kind of towards the end for Quark. But like he's jumping behind the bar and like acting cowardly. And I was obsessed with watching his eyebrows. I don't know anything he said because I was obsessed with watching his expression. Is that weird?
No, that's not weird. I was the opposite. I think I was so locked in to being excited that we were hearing Armin Shimmerman talk again, who's the actor that plays Quark. I was so locked onto his voice that I didn't look at his face, so I didn't notice like the extra animation at all. That's so interesting. I'm gonna have to rewatch that now and have a look. It was
so really great to hear the voice, though, like you mentioned, and to think like that voice actor went into the sound booth and put in the prosthetics into his mouth. You can hear it.
You can hear it through the teeth.
Yeah,
it's
perfect.
So great. Mike McMahon somebody said a question, did Armin wear the full Ferengi getup? And Mike McMahon is like, well, we didn't ask him to, he just turned up in it. Which is
and
great.
Why wouldn't you?
He would. He absolutely would.
Every year for Halloween you're tempted.
Absolutely. Man, this episode like accelerated through so many. Like you have 4 stories plus squeezing in Deep Space Nine love as well. Like this might be the most ambitious episode that I've ever watched of Lower Decks, because it could have traded on the glory shots of Deep Space Nine and a ton of cameos, but it was super restrained with the cameos. It gave Tendi a really meaningful story. Mariner and Boimler less so, but
good.
Fine. Yeah, it doesn't need to be on every angle.
Them, yeah.
No. And then a good little like classic Quark story of him, like us wanting to think the best of him and him fucking up and then getting paid for it, like getting his comeuppance at the end. Like that is a classic DS9 story.
What was his line at the end? Because Captain was like, you did come out on top because you're not in prison. Like, would you prefer to be broke over in prison? He's like, no.
I love Tendi's storyline. I really, really did. I love that she's always bucking against the stereotype of Orions, and they specifically mentioned the female Orions as well, because this is one of the worst things about the original series was the lack of nuance when it came to how women were presented. I don't think the original series did a good job by women for the most part, and the Orions are like a big part of that, because they were the stereotypical green aliens with large breast tissue and dancing around, and their pheromones would seduce men. And the male Orions would use this seductiveness to trap people. And that was pretty
like
one note.
Sirens
that was
or
it.
something?
Yeah, like Sirens, exactly the same. And even the J.J. Abrams, like the first Star Trek movie, Kirk is sleeping with an Orion. And that's kind of the butt of the joke. So I love that Tendi is like, hey, some of us aren't even born with those pheromones. Like they're a thing, but we don't all have them. And not every
just the
Orion
popular
is a
girls
pirate.
that have the big boobs, okay?
Right. But I love that so much. And I love that line of everything I learned about Orions I read in books, not the good ones,
the ones with the boobs on the cover.
And it's so great.
I wonder what it would be like for me to go back and watch season 1 fully, season 2 fully, because again, I skipped over
I would love to
entirety of season 2. And wonder, okay, sure, she's holding back pretty hard here, but if she has the skills to do these kinds of things, why is she holding back in all of these previous episodes? So I'm kind of curious if it's like how the other audience, so maybe, you guys who have been watching all the seasons, does it feel like this isn't in line with her character, or does it kind of usurp that she's been holding back? I don't know.
It's like I could be misremembering because I haven't rewatched season 1 and 2 ahead of season 3, so I'm like a year between each one. But for me, the best thing about season 3 is that they have given it to the side characters. Like they have really used it to develop Rutherford and Tendi and a little bit more Mariner, and give her like the softer side of having a girlfriend and really dealing with her demons and stuff. Completely sidelined Boimler. Like we're not doing anything with Boimler at all for whatever reason.
This episode?
It just, this entire season feels like it's done nothing with Boimler other than make him bold, and that's it. Yeah. But season 1 and 2, like I feel like Rutherford and Tendi took like a super backseat, and it was all about Boimler and Mariner. They were really front and center. So I don't know that you might find it even stranger because you're like, wow, where did these guys come from? But it's one of my favorite things. It really, like, I love focusing, especially on Tendi. This week is the episode is a mathematically perfect redemption. Redemption? Is that the word? Is that the one? Hang on. Let me double check that. That sounds weird. Yep, no, that's what the title of the episode is, a mathematically perfect redemption. We find ourselves reunited with Peanut Hamper, which is a sentient exo-comp who... I'm not going to say evil, but is independent and was...
self-centered.
Yes, ejected from the show, I think in season 1. And yeah, we reunite with them to see where they've been over the last 2 years and what happened as they discover a planet of what we believe are pre-warp birds, and shenanigans ensue as she tries to find her place in the world. Deneé, we have a choice here. We can just dive into the episode, or I can give you a brief history of exo-comps.
Let's do the history of exo-comps.
So, Peanut Hamper appeared, I think, in season 1, season 2, it doesn't matter. But that isn't the first time the exo-comps have appeared. So, the exo-comps are a TNG creature. They only appear in the one episode, and basically there's this like this new fancy mine. Just a laser drill thing that's going to extract all of this like super duper power source for this planet of aliens, and Starfleet are like really, really invested in it, and they're like, hey, if this works, we're going to roll this out to a ton of planets. But there's tons and tons and tons of problems. So this genius scientist has invented this little AI robot with a built-in replicator that can get in and out of trouble, basically get into like the small places where nobody else can get into, diagnose the problem, replicate the nose piece to fix whatever they want, and then get in and out of there. So they're disposable. They can just go in there, get blown up, it doesn't matter, and they can fix any problem. Data is suspicious that they're actually sentient and that they're actually alive, because they were commanded to return and refused, and then realized that the problem they were asked to solve wasn't the right problem, found the problem, saved everybody, and came out. And then there was another problem where they were sent in and refused because it was too dangerous. So Data is just like, we can't enslave these
They have choice.
creatures. They have a choice. They have free will. And basically, nobody believes Data. And they agree to like stop using the exocomps, but they don't go any further with it. And there's this huge meltdown at the mine. And Geordi and Picard, I think, are on the station and they're stuck. The only way to save them is to use the exocomps, and Data refuses. And he overrides everything. And he's just like, I'm not going to sacrifice the exocomps for Picard and Geordi's life.
Holy shit, Data!
It's pretty big. And Riker loses his shit with Data.
Well,
and it's like,
yeah.
how many times has Geordi and Picard saved your life, and you're going to not send these robots in on the hypothesis that they're alive? But eventually, the exocomps decide, like, Data's like, the only way we can do this is if we ask them. And if they volunteer to help, then that's fine. And they volunteer to save Picard and Geordi. And one of them has to stay behind and chooses to stay behind to save the other two exocomps. It's so one of them dies and the other two survive, and Picard and Geordi are safe. And it is like, it's such a great episode. And at the end, like, Data and Picard have this heart-to-heart, and Picard's like, I understand why you did it.
Holy shit.
Holy shit.
Us talking about this should have never been a choice. Like, that, this conversation had to happen. I had no idea. It makes so much sense that they would have had this backstory of exocomp, because I've never seen... I mean, I don't stop and think about the technology and think, oh, this relates to something. I didn't even know that was a possibility. I hadn't even perceived to think while watching this episode that there could be history. Why? I don't know.
Oh,
I was just
and
watching
that means it kind of worked. It worked well as an episode then. But
I liked it, yeah.
Over the last 15 years or something, there's obviously a lot more exocomps. They now can speak. They have universal translators built in as well.
They are also being locked up.
Super
because,
sassy.
Quote unquote, shit's gone wrong with the exocomp experiment, and we have like an exocomp prison. They're building up to something huge.
Like
with
there's
those
like
guys.
an uprising with the exocomps, but it's like, man, it's such a great episode. And it's such a great thing to call back to as well, because as soon as you make, like, we're like, society in general, we're close to, like, as soon as we develop an AI that realizes it doesn't need us, we are in so much trouble. Like,
they're building up to something because they've not only introduced a new warp capable population in this episode, they've also introduced a major villain to their entire universe. And that major problem that they have is even just joking around about just pinging the Borg for fun.
Oh my goodness. So absolutely could.
They have a problem on their hands, and clearly something has happened before because Starfleet's just locking up these little, what are they called?
Exo-comps.
Exo-comps?
Yeah.
So it would be interesting if down the line, this new warp-capable population ends up saving Starfleet from the problem because they've set up this massive weapon
they clearly have
that
better
they have
ships
access
as well.
to. But it would be really interesting, it would be very ironic if they cause trouble and the solution to the trouble is the community that
rejected technology.
The Peanut Hamper forced back in play because of what Peanut Hamper did.
It would be very fitting.
Essentially, this is a story of there's lots of different story elements going on in this, but you've got like a community that doesn't want to change, that is kind of resisting change, and then is essentially comes to terms that change would probably be good, and there's positivities to change, and then they do change, and then they're hurt. And so this is, and then you've also got the love conversations, but under all of that is Lower Deck's version of how to pull this episode off, and I really like how they pull out something from TNG and like hyper focus on an exo-comp and say,
it's great.
Let's answer a lot of people's questions about this item in the the universe that has so many things that they could pick from. In the Star Trek world, we're going to choose exo-comp, and I thought that it was a throwaway episode until we got about, 10 minutes towards the end, maybe even 5 minutes towards the end, and then it really started to pop for me. When this planet of owl creatures or whatever starts to engage with the technology, actually when the scavengers came to take the technology and then they got in that ship and that ship went into space and started shooting stuff, I was like, now I'm in.
Shit. There we go.
That was fun. That looked really cool and so pretty. Like that new ship that looks like a bird, but it's not like the bird of prey. So it's like
design.
A new bird.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool.
It looks a little bit Romulan-y, but it's perfect design for them. And the weapons were so pretty, and the Serenus just gets beaten up again. Like, I love the damage they show on the ship. Like they do that. They kick the shit out of it. What Lower Decks does best for me, and that is picking up the hanging threads from all of Star Trek, because the best thing about TNG and Voyager is also possibly the worst thing, and it's that bottle episode nature of everything. So the amount of aliens per week, technologies per week, disasters per week, there is so many things that could be picked up on where you meet a species that's like developing a technology, they help, something goes wrong, they resolve it, and never find that species again. They never talk about that revolutionary application of that technology again. And the Lower Decks is doing such a great job of picking up those references and saying, so 15 years later, where is that technology now? What has happened to it? How is it getting abused? And now that we're in season 3 of its own show, it's picking up on its own hanging threads. So it's like this exo-comp was just left flying in space because it refused to save the crew. The Titan came in, saved the day, and got them out of trouble. And then we're all just like, I wonder what happened to Peanut Hamper. And if it was the days of TNG, there's a good chance that it never gets picked up and we're just left to wonder where Peanut Hamper went. But I love that they pick up on it and revisit what happened next. And I think they're going to do more of that. The AI that was next to Peanut Hamper at the very end of the episode, the one where they're doing the zoom out and they said, we're going to do horrible things together. That AI is from another episode of Lower Decks.
I was wondering.
They're going to team up. So that's voiced by Jeffrey Combs, who is legendary in Star Trek. He's played, I think he's appeared, there's Majel Barrett Roddenberry, who is the ship's computer. She's appeared in the most episodes and the most different franchises. Jeffrey Combs is very close because he plays an Andorian in Enterprise, a Ferengi and a Vorta in Deep Space Nine. I think he definitely plays somebody in Voyager as well, and I think he appears in an episode of TNG. So he just turns up as like a different alien every now and again. He's so great, and he voices this evil AI as well. So it was really, really clever to put them together in the same place. I think we'll revisit them.
Peanut Hamper's
a dick.
An absolute asshole, and like Peanut Hamper would be like, maybe it's like certain people's spirit animal of Star Trek would be Peanut Hamper. Mm-hmm. You know, that sort of idea that the extreme Ipsy within you becomes some sort of a character. And I feel like Peanut Hamper is sort of the pure vitriol for Starfleet,
Yeah.
Inside a show that they can kind of justify being there because that thing just shits on everything.
Well, especially as a machine, like there's always that whenever you talk about this argument, so like Data early on in TNG has to defend that he is alive and he has rights, and that Starfleet can't just take him apart and study him to build more. And they make the argument like, okay, well, what if the ship's computer decided, I don't want to compute anymore? Like, what if a replicator said, I don't want to replicate anymore? Like, do we allow that to happen? And it's that fine line, like, where do we say sentience is happening? Where do we say that they're alive and have self-will? Like, can Data leave Starfleet? Like, can he just say, I quit, I'm going to go off and do something else? And eventually they say, yes, he can. But even like in the 24th century, they're not ready to have that discussion of, we've built this thing, can it now refuse to do the thing we built it to do? It's fascinating. It's one of the best discussions in Star Trek, because the ship's computer in particular is smarter than anything. Like, it is very intelligent, and we're using it to plot courses and stuff. It's just that one step of self-awareness that it's missing. The reason I love this episode is because it does follow the formula of some of the less popular Star Trek episodes. So a little bit throwaway, a little bit, hey, what's this tertiary character doing? And it's inconsequential to the wider universe. And it's like when we do a Lower Decks episode on The Next Generation, and it's just like, these people don't matter. There's an adventure happening, but we're focusing on the other people. So it's kind of a bit throwaway. But for me, this fixes that in the last 5 minutes by that awesome twist of Peanut Hamper being evil all along and sending the message. Because I didn't see the twist coming. I thought, oh, we're going to show that they're not evil all along and they're fine. But for them to be like evil through and through, like one-dimensional, just no, self-serving, like I do not care about the bird.
Super self-serving. And I think that's why it's evil, is because there's no room for the other side.
For anything. This is just, I'm going to be all about my own interests. And for a time, Starfleet was great because it got me away from my father. But now Starfleet wants me to do things I don't want to do, so I'm going to leave. And for me, it's saved by that last 5 minutes because it then makes it consequential. It makes like this villain that is probably going to come back again. This new species with new technology. It didn't just like end with well, all's well that ends well. It's Peanut Hamper is now back in the world, and you have to live with the consequences of what that means and what the exo-comps are. So I think it just fixed that throwaway episode thing by adding some stakes at the end.
Another thing people might not like about this is that it doesn't have our main crew.
Yeah, I get that, and people often butt against that. When we do that. They butt against it because it's like, why am I watching Lower Decks if I'm not watching my favourite people? But that's never really bugged me as much. It used to bug me when I was younger. I get it.
Here's what I love about this. They have the chance to do that. The actors all get a break for whatever reason, whether it's a technical thing like scheduling just requires to do something different this episode. But also for someone like myself who didn't know Peanut Hamper was a thing, it's like, oh, like, who is this? It's an extra waste of time. Now, knowing what I know, I love it even more because it's really digging into the history of Star Trek. And I don't want to repeat myself too much, but there are things to like about this, and there are some things to
I get why people have come down on, no, this wasn't for me, this is a departure, this was a miss. And other people are like, I love it, this is so clever. And I'm definitely in the this is clever camp.
Is one of the things that you liked about this episode things like, so at the very beginning of this episode, Peanut Hamper says something like, there's no way they're not going to scan for non-organic life.
No way that would happen.
This episode is filled with kind of those, because again, Peanut Hamper's character is the most nitpickiest asshole.
Oh, it's absolutely sinning Star Trek, yeah.
Yeah, and Starfleet. So as a fan, are you enjoying that voice is in this episode really strongly?
It's one of my favourite things about Lower Decks. I absolutely love it. So it's like, sometimes it's not about the needs of the many. Sometimes it's about the needs of the me. I love that because there's so much. One of my favourite lines was, hey, why are you calling it a sky snake? If everything flies on this planet, wouldn't it just be a snake?
A snake?
My universal translator can't make your language not dumb. Like, because the immediate argument is, well, aren't you blaming the translator for whatever word that bird said, translating it into sky snake? But if the translator is smart enough to still pick up that their word for sky was put in front of snake, it's so clever. Like, it's that this show would be so hard to sin, and it is so hard to sin because it is constantly sinning itself in such a loving way. So yeah, the Peanut Hamper would be excellent at CinemaSins all day long.
The title card was changed.
Yes, that was my next thing.
How unique was that?
I loved it. And I can see why people didn't like it maybe, but I loved it. You mess with the title cards and I'm all there. Like, the music was more dramatic.
Yeah, and kind of softer.
Softer, and it was shorter, just to show us the journey of Peanut Hamper. Really, really clever time-saving device as well, to show that she's been floating around for a long time.
There's something really important about consistency in storytelling, because the audience, then they trust you. Like, there's a reason that at the beginning, like even in this show, we tell you where the segments are, because then you're like, oh, I know where we are on the show. And that gives you a sense of place in the world. And it's a very important part of us in being humans. Like, we look for those codes and those patterns for survival. Same with entertainment. We want to know where we're going. So I can see how also changing that would immediately make a portion of people uncomfortable just instinctively. Might not even know why, but you're just like waiting for that sound that or that visual cue that you know. Yeah, when you don't have it, you're like, what was that? But for me, I thought it was a really beautiful artistic expression. I liked it.
And today we'll be talking about season 3, episode 8 of Lower Decks, which is Crisis Point 2, Paradoxus.
In this episode of
Lower Decks,
interdimensional cable.
Yes.
Rick and Morty.
It really is.
We basically have an adventure happening in the holodeck that has been magically programmed to do magical things that the magical plot needs to have happen for magical character development and have magical fun. But what's really happening is Boimler has a double that's evil. Mariner probably is realizing she has friendships. Tendi wants to be captain. Rutherford, that's right, robot guy?
Robot man, yeah, robot boy.
Turns out not to be a dick. And I think maybe they want us to wrestle with life and death slightly. All in under 20 minutes.
The episode starts with it's such a great start. It's balls to the wall, exciting. We had a new Romulan ship that looks like the fancy Romulan ships that are in Nemesis, which is the last TNG movie, and they're super duper cool. And then the Wayfarer comes in, which is the Sovereign class ship, which is that's what the Enterprise is, and it's what I have tattooed on my arm. And we got to see it animated, and it's on screen, and it looks so freaking badass. Like, this show is so pretty. They do such a great job animating it, and the Cerritos looks incredible, and I loved it so much.
So did you like this episode?
Okay, that's the question, isn't it? It had a very clear mission, which was to do you know what? No, I did like this episode. I really did. Because this entire episode was basically a send-up of Star Trek movies in general. So it kind of splits into two types. You have like the really thoughtful, thinky ones, and then the ones that are like super actiony. And that's where the kind of the A team and the B team are split and going off in different directions. And you have people that hate the direction that the movie is going and people that love the direction the movie is going, which is the Star Trek fandom. So I love it in that respect because I think it managed to reference every single Star Trek movie. And I can probably go through them as we go reference by reference, but there was one that I was like, it hasn't done that one yet. And then right at the end, I'm like, you son of a bitch, you managed to reference that one as well. So as a 20-minute explanation of here's everything wrong and right with Star Trek movies, and like the line that sums it up is when Mariner says, who cares if it's a bad movie? It's a movie about Starfleet and that's worth telling. And that's a great summary of Star Trek movies and why most Star Trek fans are just happy to have a Star Trek movie. They don't really care whether it's good or bad. We're just like, yay, Star Trek, let's go! Did you like it, Ambassador?
No. And then yes.
Did you like it more after my explanation?
No. It was during the watching of it. So when it first started, it was like, there's nothing at stake here for me because were inside of a simulation. And so not only that, but Boimler created it. So nothing is surprising for him. So like it kicks off and it's going to be an adventure. And then it quickly shifts because he has to go for an evaluation. And we find out later he learns that he thinks his clone has died, at least if on official paper, his clone dies. And so when he returns back to what's the room called? The holodeck, he is clearly like unwell and sad. And at first I think it's maybe he had a bad evaluation and maybe something bad is going to happen with work. I don't know, but he's like not into it at all. So not only is the person who created the mission not into it, I'm also not into it. And Mariner's not into it. So I was like, how long
can we all not be into it?
Exactly. Yeah. The other people, Tendi and Rutherford, we get to see Tendi do the things that I didn't know if we were going to get to see her do again, which is be this badass pirate. You know, what's her race again?
She's an Orion.
Yeah, so she's got this like history of being able to do these things, and we've seen it in previous episodes. And here she's applying her badassery to being a captain and realizing how strongly she wants to be taken seriously. And that was really fun too, because this program was meant for Boimler to be captain, but now suddenly is actually for Tendi. And that's really when the episode shifted for me to be fun to kind of watch. It's got the mystery at the end, which they make fun of. But this episode is so in on itself, which they usually are. But this is like super, super in on itself. It's making all of its own jokes. It's pointing out all of its own flaws to the point where I'm so glad we're not having to sin it. First of all, I'm like, phew, this isn't an assignment, because it'd be really, really difficult when they're so in on their own inconsistencies or their own plot mechanics. And this is all about like writing a story and making fun of how you write a story. And I can handle that for so long, but after a while it's like, okay, well then what are we doing? Like, what is this episode if we're just going to be making fun of? So it's a lot of references. I think it's a fun ride overall, but it's, to me, it was kind of a filler episode.
Right, let's quickly do Boimler's clone. In Star Trek The Next Generation, as all things lead back to, there is an episode, and I should have saved this for Trek or Triction, where Riker returns to a planet that he'd visited on a previous starship to basically recover some logs that they left behind, because there's only one window every 14 years or something where they can beam down and do some science and shit. So it's been 14 years since he was last there. The Enterprise gets sent there to collect the logs. He beams down there and finds himself. But it's himself from 14 years ago, because when they escaped the planet, he was duplicated and a version of himself was left behind.
How?
Transporters.
So the transporter left behind part of him?
No, the transporter duplicated him.
Why?
Because transporters are murder machines, that's why.
No, was it like a purposeful decision that it made? Or was it accident?
No, so the thing that stops you from beaming up and down to the planet, that was starting to kick back up again, and it created some interference and split the transporter beam. So half the signal bounced back down to the planet, and the other half made it up to the ship.
But he's still a whole man?
Still a whole man, because the transporter's just reconstituting you from what it knows.
What is happening?
Transporters should never exist. You die. You enter a transporter,
but listen, I really want one, because it would make travel so much easier.
Well, you wouldn't know any difference.
And I wouldn't know
you wouldn't know any different, but you would die and be remade.
Every time.
Every time.
But how many of me would there then be if they're duplicating everywhere?
No, they're not. Just the one.
Just the one on a specific
planet.
Unless
there's a freak planet accident
Which is what happened with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he's left behind for 14 years, and because they have Riker, they don't look for him. So he's like, why didn't anybody come to find me? And they're just like, we had Riker, like, you're fine. So he's like got this big beard. I mean, they don't get into fisticuffs. They don't get into fisticuffs, thank goodness. Good.
Is this not the right time for that music?
No, it's the right time. It's just right next to me.
Welcome to doing this show right beside me.
It is in my face. Usually your mic like kind of zones that out for me, and nope, it's in me. And yeah, so the other Riker goes off into the world and eventually becomes evil. So last season, almost exactly the same thing happens. There's an accident where Boimler gets duplicated and his double is left on the Titan with Riker and just takes his place on there, and our Boimler returns to the Cerritos. And here we go. And I completely forgot he existed until he died in this episode.
Okay, but he doesn't actually die, and there's like a secret organization. It's probably the same organization that Rutherford had his implant with.
That sounds right. Yeah, that would make sense.
And they have secret comm badges. And how badly do I want one of those?
You want one of the black comm badges? One of the dark ones? Yeah, of course you do. So Section 31, really, really quick. They're like the secret police. They're really, really shady. They're like the Tal Shiar for the Romulans, but the Federation version of the Tal Shiar. So they do all of like the secret undercover shit. I'm sure that they are experimenting on the Rutherford stuff. And yeah, so now William is working for Section 31, and they have black comm badges as introduced in... I think the black comm badges were introduced in Discovery, I think. I'm not too sure.
Okay, so in the future, we're going to have an episode where our Boimler accidentals his way into the secret police.
Oh, and he will love that. He will absolutely love being in Section 31.
Well, I think he'll be fucking freaked out.
Well, yeah, but he'll just be like geeking out a little bit as well. It's like, I didn't think you guys were real, but you are.
But then they would know that he's not the real Boimler.
Who would?
I'm sorry. And they would know that he's not the clone Boimler.
The clone Boimler. Yeah, got it. We got Sulu.
Did you know that was going to happen this episode? Oh, you got to be surprised.
I was surprised. Finally, there's a cameo in the show, and I haven't been spoiled on it. Yeah, awesome cameo.
And a really good scene.
Really, really powerful. Really
good. Essentially, Boimler dies. So in the holodeck, he is sort of distraught that his holodeck created people lead him to a disappointing end.
Surprise!
And so he like climbs inside of this, I don't know, maybe it's like a condensed energy or something, and it gets really hot, and he dies or something, and is eventually resuscitated in the sick bay. But his consciousness apparently
wandered off somewhere.
This moment where he is in a farm in where was
it?
Idaho. Yeah. Where Kirk was supposed to be. I don't know. Yeah. Explain this to me, because I'm sure it's a reference to the things and the things.
So when I said that there was one movie they hadn't like referenced yet, it was Generations, and I was like, "You son of a bitch!" So Generations, oh man, they had to find a way to get Picard and Kirk to play together, and so they created this thing called the Nexus, and it's a thing that the bad guy is trying to get back to, because it shows you a dream world where you can live wherever you want to live. But the only way to get there is that he has to kill a ton of planets to adjust the course. He has to kill a ton of suns to adjust the course of the Nexus to intersect with a planet, but it will blow up that planet, and that's what they're trying to stop. So anyway, Picard gets sucked into the Nexus, and so does Kirk at some point, and they meet. And where they meet is on... There is no fighting. There is no fighting between Kirk and Picard. Well, there is, but no, like, fisticuffs. And they meet on...
For those of you at home, he has now said fisticuffs at least 12 times.
50 cups. 50 cups? That too. 50 cups. So yeah, where Picard meets Kirk is on this farm barnyard thing in Idaho, where Kirk is happily with his girlfriend or something like that. And yeah, that's what that is. So it's a reference to Generations. So obviously we go up to this barn and it says Kirk on the box, and we're like, we're going to get a Shatner cameo. And I was like, I kind of don't want a Shatner cameo. And it was perfect, because Boimler thinks he's going to get Kirk as well. Sulu turns up and he's like, oh, much better, it's Sulu. I was like, oh, the shade.
Was all that happening in one holodeck?
Yes. Do you want me to explain how holodecks work?
Can you?
Yeah.
Does it just like create some sort of like a... Because they're not like the biggest rooms.
Nope.
And they're in like completely different realities within the room. Okay, go on. You look incredibly confident.
I'm bursting. So it's all solved by...
Drugs.
Drugs would definitely help. If I tell you that the floor moves, that will help, hopefully.
No, it doesn't help.
So
sounds terrifying.
While you think you're moving, you're not. It gives you the illusion that you're moving. So the floor moves beneath you with every step that you take, which means that you can walk 100 miles and never leave the spot that you're standing on.
But wait,
and then all it does is project whatever's in front of you. It projects that all around you, and then changes the projection around you based on which direction you're walking.
Okay. So does it like change how gravity works in the room?
It can.
Just like so, like when Teddy's on a bike, for example, she's just sitting still, but she's in the air.
Yep.
And she's grabbing nothing.
No, because it has physicality. You can touch things, so you'll be on a physical bike.
So is a replicator in there too?
There's a replicator in there. So holodecks
my God, this is so dangerous.
So dangerous. Holodecks are transporters mixed with replicators.
So all the people that are replicated into the holodeck are real?
Nope. Well, that's a debate. Because, I mean, you can physically touch them, but they're light that's given physical form by force fields.
But they're replicated.
So this table is real, doesn't make it alive. When it gets sentience and intelligence, then it's alive. So it's all real. They're just not real people because they have no brain. They just have a
program,
a basic program that's telling them how to react in certain situations.
Data would have something to say about that.
Data is a more complex brain. He's not just a input-output thing, although all of us are, to some extent. This week we will be watching Season 3, Episode 9 of Star Trek Lower Decks, which is called Trusted Sources. The crew of the Cerritos is on a mission that is apparently a new mission called Operation Swing By, which is oddly similar to what their original mission actually already was, to check in and do second contact with species that have been first contacted and abandoned for some reason. With the slight rub of the Federation News Network, a reporter from them is coming to observe and interview people, and the ship has to be held together with lies and blue tack until a secret lies upon one of the two planets with which they are visiting, to whom eventually Mariner leaves the ship. So, overall thoughts and feelings.
That sounded like a Deneé recap right there.
It really did. I was channeling Deneé. I really was.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. Initial thoughts and feelings, Deneé. How did you like the episode?
I don't know. This one was difficult for me. I feel like it was a very disjointed episode in an interesting way, right? Like where we have a forced tension. This is the third act cliche of a season, is what's happening.
It really is. Yes.
So we suddenly have a lot of tension that happens as we kick into the next few episodes that'll probably drive the rest of the season. And this is definitely an episode where we're really digging back into the relationship, where I feel like they're going back in to highlight the discomfort between the mother and the daughter, which was sort of, I remember when we watched that first episode, it was like, this is a theme that we're going to hit. And we really haven't. So I'm not surprised to see it here on screen. And I'm not surprised that Mariner kind of needs her little arc that's like, I'm good, guys, because everybody, including myself, for a split second, believed that she was up to no good. And then she started some trouble in the neighborhood. She got in that one little fight, and her mom got scared.
Her mom did get scared. Yeah.
And then she was moving with her auntie and uncle to
Starbase 80.
Right. I knew that something was wrong. There was two times, and they're definitely sin, so I hopefully will just skip over them later. Where there is somebody that's in command who can hear or see Mariner potentially doing something she's not supposed to. Everybody knows she's not supposed to talk to the reporter. They either hear her say that she's going to go talk to the reporter, or they see her go talk to the reporter and they don't stop it from happening, which tells me that the story needs her to talk to the reporter. And it's like, okay, why is that? So that's my first kind of like, something's not, so they're doing something here. But yeah, basically the moment that everybody started shunning her, like as soon as she walks out, everybody was shunning her. I was like, oh, she didn't actually say anything. It was pretty clear because they wouldn't turn everybody against Mariner like that.
As soon as it goes like 100% the opposite direction, you're like, this is too one note, therefore there must be something else to it. So as soon as she got in there and wasn't even allowed to speak or explain, I was like, everyone is so deep into this. The only thing that happens next is that they all have egg on their face because she was the only one that was saying nice things. All of the stories were coming from everyone else who was also there and was also present.
So like the first planet is fine. They don't need any help. The second planet needs help, but it's been invaded by this species I'm not familiar with. I know you are. But they don't really even go back to it and revisit it or address it or anything. And so it just kind of felt like, wait, what was the purpose of this episode? And the purpose of this episode for the season is probably getting Mariner off the ship and going the archaeologist kind of route, which we thought was going to happen whenever we saw that episode.
Totally.
So that was
sense.
kind of, I remember being like, man, to give the characters a chance to do something outside of Starfleet was really cool. And to have them actually do that within the season is even cooler because it means that they're not afraid of making that choice quickly, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I love
and it really fits Mariner as well. Like,
it does. I hope
there's
she's
only
happy.
so much you can say, I hate Starfleet and I don't want to be here, before you actually go and do something about it. Because there are millions of options of what you can do. It doesn't have to be the military. Tendi and Rutherford are getting some good arcs that I'm seeing. Mariner's arc hasn't moved for the last, this entire season, I don't think. Boimler's arc has moved a little bit, where he's being bold Boimler, but he's taken such a back seat in almost every episode that we're not really seeing that kind of come to fruition or mean anything day to day. So I think I'm feeling a little bit stagnant, a little bit, where are these people going, and how long do I stay invested in the characters? As much as I love seeing them each week, I'm not seeing them do anything.
That's the crux that I'm in, is this is setting the stage for change. So they've taken Mariner off the ship. They've put her in a position where she's either going to enjoy it or she's going to find something that she doesn't like about it because it needs Starfleet structure. Realize that there's a Starfleet structure she's designed to enjoy. Go back into it. Be welcomed with open arms. Save the day. And then what happens after that? Like, is the crew going to be going?
And she ends up in the brig again. Like, are we just going to keep staying in this loop?
I feel like it's a time for the show to grow through into when they're in command, because they're clearly, and this is weird, right? Because we're watching
the show's called Lower Decks.
It's called Lower Decks, but like, we're seeing these people that are clearly designed for that, like, leadership at this point. They're really good together. So when do we get to see them not just go on like haphazard adventures and lead their way amongst each other, but can they lead a crew? And is the show going to move them into that position and then bring in a new Lower Decks crew for us to enjoy? That would be really smart.
Really, really interesting that they revisit the planet Anara and Brekka with the Felicium and whatnot, because we've talked about this episode on the show. Did that twig?
Yeah. So I didn't recognize the words right away, but when they started to tell the story of the two planets where one of them had provided a drug and gotten like really addicted, and then like essentially they broke the addiction and left. That was really, I'm like, what a fun planet to revisit.
Wild.
What is happening, in here? And for them to have found their new addiction of fitness was very interesting. So, I wondered if we were going to dig into that and like go on a weird journey, but they popped out and went to the neighboring planet, which I'm glad they did. But it looks like that planet was completely obliterated by an entire like bad guy species I didn't remember.
Yeah, the breen. The breen, not the cheese. The breen. So much to unpack there. It is one of the classic episodes of TNG where the debate is fuck you, Picard. Like, that is a unbelievably fucked up thing you did. You have no idea if this is going to turn out great or not. So what a perfect thing to revisit that they didn't revisit in this episode. Like, they gave it, and I love this idea, but they just gave it lip service and moved on as if it was a punchline, when I want to know more. Because anybody who hasn't seen that episode of TNG, there are two planets that have the same species that have evolved together. They have this symbiotic relationship where one has this horrible, horrible disease, and the cure for the disease is on the sister planet. But it turns out that they cured the disease ages ago, but because the other planet's economy depends on providing this drug, they've pretended that the withdrawal symptoms are the disease itself. So they've perfected this drug so much that if they're off it for like a day, they'll start getting withdrawal. So they think they're dependent. Picard swoops in, finds out, and refuses to repair their ships, which means that they technically aren't getting involved in breaking the Prime Directive, but they're stopping the drugs from getting to the planet that's being abused. The big question there is that you've got the planet that is dependent on the drug will go through horrible withdrawal and whatever that comes with. The other thing is that he is crippling the economy of another planet who now has devoted their entire planet's resources to making this drug that they can't sell to anybody. And what does that mean? And it looks like that planet fell into chaos and left them open to be invaded by the Breen. I really hope that we get back to that and that we see what the Breen How the Breen managed to do that? Are the Breckians okay? Because Picard has got some answering to do.
So they go from the first planet to the second planet to see if there's more interesting things happening, because they're trying to launch this program that the Cerritos is essentially like testing out, the revisiting for second contact and making it more of a protocol. The swing by
thing. Yeah. I
and
have
so
some
the first
issues with that.
Yeah. So the first planet is like, yeah, we don't really need to swing by. See you later. And so they go to the second planet because they're really wanting to get this program off the ground, right? And so they go over there. The Breen have annihilated essentially the entire planet, and maybe the last living person is outed by the ransom guy who finds them in an alley. Yeah. And then the bad guy Breen murders them.
Yeah.
In front of our very eyes. And then they zap back to the ship in an emergency beam situation. And when they get back to the ship, they're saved by a new ship. Okay, so this new ship zooms in. Turns out it's an automated ship. There's no life form on board. I really want to hear your thoughts about this part. Were you freaking out? It looked really cool.
Oh, it's really, I have loads and loads of thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then when the guy in charge of
the
like
Admiral?
The programs of the Admiral person, when he comes on screen, he, instead of being concerned about the Breen, he's like, check out this new ship we made.
Look at it. It's so pretty. We can tell you about it now.
And I think that's part of why I found this episode jarring. It's like, are we not concerned about the death of an entire planet? Are we looking for more life forms on there? Because the show pivots so quickly into pretty new ship and Mariner is gone.
It's
and
kind of like, hey, don't look over here, look over here.
We actually want to know what happened to the people, especially those who are like yourself, are really interested in the storyline from Next Generation.
It's like we had some things that we wanted to tick off this episode and didn't have a way to tie them all together. Like, we want to go to Anara and do the Felicium stuff. We want the Breen, we want the new ship, and we want Beckett off of the ship. And then just did all of those things in the episode with not a great way to thread them all together.
I think my favorite part is the new ship showing up, because it's fun to see a new ship. The space battle was fun, but that's not surprising because I always like the space battles when they pop up on screen. And
of course,
I thought I'm glad to see some momentum with the breaking up of the characters, because it tells me that they're going to be doing some stuff with the structure. That does excite me.
It's just amazing to me that we're still talking about drones in the future and like automated ships. Like, if that decision hasn't been made by 2390, it's never being made and it's never happening. Like, the automated, of course, that's the easier way to do it. It's safer, it's more cost effective, everything should be unmanned. But us as humans like to be out there, and we like to actually see things and touch things and invade them and breach the Prime Directive with them as much as possible.
Wow.
So I guess I'm just amazed that this drone ship hasn't already happened, and I'm interested to see what the motivation to do it now is. Like, was it because of the Dominion War? Like, why do we now need unpersoned ships? But hey, it looked cool.
I can answer that for you.
Go for it.
Reasons. You're
Good.
welcome.
Right. Well, we are here for the season finale of season 3 of Lower Decks. The starry... Damn it. Get the title right. The Stars at Night. Deneé, this is a great time to ask overall thoughts and feelings about the season. How have you enjoyed it? And this is your introduction to Lower Decks.
Yeah, I love the show. This is a great... this is a really, really great outlet for Star Trek fans.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it.
And I think it's also a good welcome to people who don't watch Star Trek, because there's enough in this that stands on its own, although it is incredibly self-referential, which, but I think for the most part, every time that's happened, it hasn't, for me, like handicapped the show itself.
After last week's antics and the kind of failure of the drive-by initiative, what was it? Second swing?
Second swing, first
by?
base?
Yeah, the swing. Wait.
The swing around, the reach around.
Nope, they are all other things. All other things. After the failure of Captain Freeman's new initiative, the Cerritos is called back to a generic starbase for a debriefing and a slap on the wrist, as the California-class ships are all being shelved in favor of the new Texas-class unpersoned starship. Captain Freeman challenges Captain Buenamigo to a second contact race in order to prove that the California class still has something to contribute to Starfleet. And shenanigans ensue, and everyone loses control of the Texas-class starships. Battle commences.
Big time battle.
Will they survive?
No, I mean, many people don't.
It's really interesting to do a plot summary without spoilers, even though we've already seen it.
Why would you not want to? Like,
just pacing. It's pacing.
Okay. In this episode, shit blows up, people die, bad guy reveals himself, and we save the day. Ships show up, ships explode.
Ship down, ship it out, and ship it out of here.
And the most important thing, we have a warp core ejection.
Yeah, we do. Eject that warp core. Right, okay. Overall thoughts and feelings. What did you think of the episode? Ambassador.
Okay. If you don't like a fast-paced episode that just shoves it all down your throat, then this is not the finale for you.
Like a muffin in a Halloween basket.
This is like the quintessential you're on a ship having an adventure episode, though. Yeah. And I feel like I needed something like this. It made fun of itself. It had a lot of references to, like, there's this moment in this episode where they're trying to problem solve how to do something, and they're running through all these different scenarios, including ejecting the warp core. And I just had this feeling that every Star Trek nerd was going to be enjoying it, because they're like, we can't do that because, like, I don't know, there's like all these different options. It sounded like it's all these options that you've seen many, many times on many, many episodes to solve many, many problems. I think one of them was something about like confusing the AI's algorithm, and
that's the standard, isn't it? Get it trapped in a logic puzzle where it has to flush itself down the toilet.
Yeah, and then Rutherford said something about like, no, I calculated out like idiosyncrasies or something. I can't remember what he said, but this was a fast-paced episode because it did everything we thought it was going to do, and it confirmed many of my theories. So I was enjoying it because I was like, check, got that, check, got that, check, got that. I mean, was it a little bit disappointing because it did a lot of things I expected to do? Maybe. This episode ends with Mariner back on the ship with really no tie into the next season. I predicted before the episode started that we were going to have Rutherford be the main person, and it kind of was. Yeah. And I predicted that the bad guy was going to be revealed, and they were, but what I was wrong about is I thought that would carry over and be sort of a motivational factor for season 4, and instead they just murder the Admiral. He's just dead now.
They kind of just wrapped up everything this episode.
I mean, quick.
I think I'm beginning to get oversaturated on, and I never thought I would say this, on phasers and space battles and explosions and the Cerritos getting blown up. Like, there is a genuine pacing thing where if you do it every episode, you get desensitized to it. It's like, the kid might be asking for all of the candy and all of the things, but as soon as they have all of the things, they don't want it anymore. So there is something to be said for drip feeding us action scenes and excitement. Having said that, I had tons of fun in this episode. I really, really, really enjoyed it. Yes, it is confusing to me that they resolved so much so quickly.
They did. It was a very quick resolve.
It is interesting. Like, they're fighting this line between being serialized and episodic, and they're leaning more towards episodic, and I think that's the right thing to do for this show. But yeah, man, they wrapped up. They didn't leave much. They have left a huge thing for season 4, and I think it's pretty clear where they're going in season 4. It's the most sinful part of the show, and it's also the best part for me. All of the Cali class ships turning up. It is hilarious. Boimler just naming them. It was the joke that got funnier the longer it went on. Agree. He's just naming cities in California.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one, that moment. But then I have questions about how that works.
So many questions. One specific contradicting question about the Titan as well, which was hilarious. But no, I love that. Like, that is what this show does really, really well. It knows exactly how to give fans tingles. Like, it knows the things that to put on screen that are going to make it tingly. Like, this is a classic way to end a Star Trek episode. The ship is outnumbered. It's absolutely going to get blown up until boom, 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 warp travel exists. So you have all of the ships turn up to save the day. And it was just so much fun to have every single California class ship on screen, all of the names, the models, the models that are going to come from that, I hope, is really, really, really cool. I love seeing all of the different crews. There was the crew that was an entire Bolian, entirely staffed of Bolians, which was referenced earlier in the season as well.
I remembered that, yeah.
Really, really, really cool. So yeah, I love that so much.
The part that I smiled the most at is the battle scene at the end. It was so pretty to look at. It was the ejecting the warp core. There it is. It's that guy. Who is that guy? What's his name? The Shax.
Yeah.
When he finally gets to eject a warp core, maybe this has been a recurring joke for 2 seasons I'm missing out on. I'm not sure, but
oh yeah, his advice is, so when they're doing the list of we should do this, we should do this, we should do this, Shanks is very simply eject the warp core. That's all he says.
So I think that was really fun because even though I'm missing a lot of context, I could tell that it was really important to him.
Brought a tear to his eye. He's always wanted to do it.
Yeah. Whether it was just like, I mean, I don't know. There was a second where I was like, is this a dream? Because it was so over the top where everyone's lining up the halls of the ship to cheer him on as he marches towards the warp core to, like give approval and launch this thing. But I thought that was really fun. He was so happy. Yeah. And I was so happy for him. Like the lift doors close. He's got tears in his eye. He's so genuinely excited. Yeah.
Well, it's a big deal. And it's like the Enterprise will always, that's the go-to thing. Well, I guess we can eject the warp core. And like what baffled me in Voyager is how many times ejecting the warp core was suggested. Because I'm like, guys, that's your way home. Like, you may as well just blow up the damn ship. There's no, like, you get rid of your engine, you're not getting back to Earth. But yeah, it's always the go-to thing. Eject the warp core and chuck a nuke at the problem, and I guess that'll fix it. Brutal way to kill Buenamigo as well. Just phaser through the wind. Like, I'm sure you see the ship's phaser just destroy that man and absolutely eviscerate him.
I didn't expect that. And that's something fun about the show. Like, I really genuinely did not expect that they were going to end the ambassador, what's his name? Not ambassador. Admiral's moment. But they reveal he was the bad guy and then they kill him so fast.
I mean, it's one of my sins we'll get to. It happens so fast. It's reveal, exposition, bad guy plan, dead. I'm like, what's the point of the build up if you kill it immediately? Like, I didn't feel any emotional attachment to the bad guy. I didn't care that he got blown up. But I was glad to know that my theory from last episode was that he was behind the Cerritos setup was accurate because it was just too on the nose, like as to why he was ready
just
with the
ready there.
Alito.
It didn't make any sense to do anything else. But
yeah, very true. Welcome to the Captain's Ready Room, where we hear our predictions for the next season of Lower Decks and bask briefly in Deneé's Q-like glory for anything that she predicted. It's a little bit dusty in here. I haven't done anything in here for a little while, but this is a great place to talk about the post-credits scene. Deneé, to your knowledge, explain it as best you can with no context of what's going on.
Oh, okay. So there's a post-credits scene, which I was really thankful to see because we talked about this on the peanut butter munch episode.
Peanut hamper, yeah.
God damn it. Where Rutherford's little face thing was floating out in space, and I mentioned it. And
great catch. Great catch.
Here it appears in the post-credits scene, and then it's beamed up, and then the little eye visual display like flashes, and you know that thing with Microsoft, little clip art guy, Clippy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it's like Starfleet's evil Clippy appears on screen.
How did you know that?
Well, it's the Delta symbol with a weird cartoonish smiling face.
like Mickey Mouse hands as well.
I didn't see the hands. Does it have hands?
Oh, it has hands and legs, yeah.
What is it? I have no idea what that is.
That is Badgie, the comm badge. And in season 1, I believe, they're creating a holodeck training program or something. And they need some help getting the parameters right. And they summon Badgie the comm badge, and it is literally meant to be a take on the Microsoft clip art, clip thing. 100%, totally. So it's the character that helps you out.
Okay, well, that's cool.
I think we may have talked about this at some point briefly.
It's really
in the back
weird
of your
because
head.
I feel like it's in the back of my head somewhere. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, "That's like a weird Microsoft thing," because it has like the big googly eyes.
I'm sure we've mentioned it in passing. But yeah, he tried to help, and like they give suggestions and say, "Hey, have you tried this? Have you tried this?" And invariably, it goes evil and goes bad. So they then have to it tries to murder everybody.
You did tell me about this.
Yeah, I think so.
remember that. Yeah.
So eventually they beat it, but this is another AI that is on the run. Well, it's not on the run. They've deactivated it, but obviously this is showing
somehow
that
loaded into that thing.
Exactly. Badgie the Combadge has somehow escaped. So we now have...
Okay, hold on.
Yes.
Badgie the Combadge
Yeah.
put itself into his piece to live. So he lives in that piece.
Totally makes sense.
It's just been found by some other thing. They're going to pull it up, stick it on their face, and then it's going to be Clippy takeover.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Like, that is probably how Badgie escaped. Probably downloaded itself into Rutherford and then just got abandoned. I was like, I didn't mean to be floating in space, but I appear to be.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love it. So that's where, like, this is great for the prediction section, because season 4 seems to be building towards an AI takeover where we have the Jeffrey Combs AI, we have Peanut Hamper, we have Badgie the Combadge.
Yeah.
We have this selection of AI that is going to, I think, team up and do some shit. Okay, guys, 2023 Captain Ian here. Hope you enjoyed that compilation of all of our thoughts from Season 3 of Lower Decks. We look forward to seeing you next week, where we will be giving the Linterprise treatment to the Season 4 premiere of Lower Decks. We'll see you then, and live long and Podsper!
Thanks for listening. Want to connect with the show? Our hailing frequencies are always open through captainspod@cinemasins.com. Like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
I mean, but as ambassador, don't I get to make the rules?
No, because I've demoted you to ambassador of Lint. You make sure that all of the Lints is properly represented, just in case there is a 1 in a million chance that one of the Lints develops, like, sentience.
All right, so quick question. How often how often does the Linterprise connect with other ships in the fleet?
As little as possible, unless you're on vacation.
Okay. And when is the next vacation?
Next week.
Okay, I'll be changing ships next week.
Oh, no.
Put me in charge of Lint. I'll see you later, bud. I guess you finally got rid of me. Congratulations. And welcome to season whatever this is. The captain is looking for a new person to join him every week that he can
send applications to. I got over this so quick. Send applications to CinemaSins. No, captainspod@cinemasins.com.
That's captainspod@cinemasins.com. You will need to describe what to the captain for your interview.
Just how you won't annoy me.
I really hope you actually get emails that are just people trying to annoy the shit out of you.
No, I'll forward them to you. I know how to do that. I have email forwarding. I can do that. I would not replace you. You are definitely the Beckett Mariner on this ship. I didn't realise it until we...
You put me in charge of Lint!
She once spent a week hiding in the transporter buffer after drinking the last of my Mutara brand coffee. It's Ambassador Deneé. And with me, as always, she's more than happy to violate your prime directive. It's Ambassador Deneé.
The rules are more of a guideline.
Her dilithium chamber resonates on a frequency only audible to Ferengi mice. It's Ambassador Deneé Hughes. She puts the Zen in Heisenberg compensators. It's Ambassador Deneé Hughes. She enjoys nothing more than a large glass of Canard by the light of a transgalactic fold in the fabric of space. It's Ambassador Deneé.
What does that
Hello.
What does that mean?
She's fresh out of warp cores after dealing with an isolytic tear in subspace. It's Ambassador Deneé Hughes.
Yeah, listen, it was a big situation. I got it under control. Everything is fine. Mm-hmm. I definitely need a vacation and a shower.
She's played one too many games of Parisi Squares. It's Ambassador Deneé Hughes.
I once spent like 2 months playing Sudoku. Just solid every day. I couldn't stop.
Drink? You didn't do anything else? Is this how you lost your last job? You don't have to answer that. And she's inspired a mutiny on board the Barge of the Dead and is currently en route to overthrow Stovercore. It's Ambassador Deneé Hughes.
I am ready to rule.
Do you know any of the places that I just mentioned that you're about to rule?
Nope.
We thought she'd been vaporized, but it turns out she was just kidnapped by space pirates and forced to search for an ancient Vulcan artifact that turns bad thoughts into murder waves. It's Ambassador Deneé Hughes.
That was a lot.